Hey everybody, welcome back to Mambition.
Hi.
um,
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex.
and this is Tiffany. So,
And go ahead, Tiffany.
I don't know, Alex, you know what? I will push back and give you the floor.
Wonderful. Well, we're really, really excited today, hence us speaking over one another. As far back as our first episode, we were talking about our guest that we've got with us today. I think the very first episode of this podcast, I was talking about Maxine Nwaneri's book, which is absolutely fabulous. And we're so excited to have Maxine here with us. So Maxine is a graduate of Cambridge University. She's a #1 Amazon international bestseller. And she's a highly acclaimed speaker and business consultant. She's a certified executive coach, and through her business, The Future is Greater, she empowers others as a coach, speaker, and consultant, helping individuals and organizations achieve harmonious success and discover their true potential. But that's just part of her incredible story, and she's here to share that with you today. I'm a super fan of Maxine. I absolutely love her book, so I'm hugely excited for her to be here and to share with you. Her story is absolutely inspirational. So I hope you're ready to hear it. Hi, Maxine.
Oh my gosh, Alex, can I just bring you around to just introduce me everywhere I go, especially like wow, thank you. It's so good to be here, and I love your podcast. I've been listening. I think it's amazing what you are doing.
Oh, so thank you.
On, really.
Thank you, Maxine. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So where do we begin? Where do you want me to begin?
Well, tell us a bit about yourself, your story. I know you talk about it in the book, but imagine our readers haven't read it yet, and give them a bit of a flavour of your story and how, I guess, the kind of pivotal moments that led to your success and your, I guess, mission to help women find their purpose.
Yeah. So my story is like completely bonkers. So I'm the person that people usually meet, and when they hear it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I would never have guessed that looking at you," because I look, fairly normal, going, speaking at Cambridge and places like that. But what people don't know is that literally around, sort of 25 years ago, I was in a situation where I had run away from home because I was a little bit nuts then. I'd got into, all kinds of crazy behavior, taking drugs, dropped out of school, wound up homeless. I was literally down to my last £3 coins. And at this point, I had literally upset every single person in my life because I thought I knew so much more than them and had no one to call. This was not the days of like mobile phones. It was like literally pay phones. And I couldn't think of one person I could call. And when I got into a situation where I was about to run out of money and feeling pretty scared, I'd been working at Starbucks, lost my job. It was just as bad as it could get for one person. And I remember sort of speaking to this friend, I'm doing quotes for those listening, this friend who was kind of living this wild lifestyle the same as me. And she had this suggestion. She's like, "Hey, I found out this job we could go do, and you don't have to pay too much money. You don't have to do too much. You get paid loads of money. And do you want to come?" I'm like, "Yeah, I need a job that pays loads of money and I don't have to do too much." Rather naive. I should have really known what I was walking into, but I only really hit me when we walked into the room, and I literally began to panic. My heart is like pounding, beating up my chest. And like, what in the world am I doing here? Like, what have I just walked into? Further background, I'm Nigerian by origin, a very strict upbringing, went to church growing up. And I now walk into this situation, I'm thinking, how do I go from that relatively good upbringing, wanting to be a doctor growing up, to this situation, which, if you haven't figured out, was a pimp looking to hire women into his business. And I remember just freaking out and freezing, thinking, oh my God, what do I do now? And I must have like zoned out or something, because the next thing I remember was this guy now like just looking at me furious, like, what is wrong with this woman? Saying, "You know how much you're supposed to charge?" And I nearly fainted because I'm like, I don't know, like, what you're supposed to charge. I worked at Starbucks. Like, and I remember just shaking, like shaking.
Sounds terrifying.
Horrifying.
Wow.
I had never been so horrified and so ashamed at the same time. I don't know how those two feelings at the same time is the most horrible thing ever. And I remember just feeling like, oh my God, like, what do I do? And as if that things couldn't get any worse, this guy then looks at me and says, "What choice do people like you have anyway?" And I remember thinking, oh, I think if he'd slapped me in the face, I'd have preferred that, because that hurt, because it was so. And I remember shaking, thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, how in the world do I get out of this mess? And I remember as I thought about how in the world do I get out of this, I heard a voice within me so clearly, like I hear both of you now, say, "This is not who you're meant to be. You're meant for so much more." And I remember thinking, oh, wow, okay, I don't know what that is, but I want that and not this mess. So that gave me the courage or whatever it took. I needed to kind of dash out of the room into the freezing street in Soho. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's freezing, but it feels so good. It smells fresh compared to that dump. And that was a turning point, because even though there was nothing literally in the natural that told me that I had any other choice, like the guy said, that voice kind of let me into something, and I began to listen to it and tap into it. Very long story short, get the book for like the full version. But that voice sort of led me back into a school system I dropped out of, ended up excelling, getting the first for my first degree at the University of Wales, before doing quite well in my career, moving to Cambridge, and then building a successful international career, and then having kids. So it literally, that was such a turning point. That was such a pivotal moment that I thought, wow, as I look back, it doesn't even feel like the same person. But I say all that to say, coming back to your question of how does that help you empower people, whatever situation you might find yourself in as a human being, as a mom, we're talking about here, it can feel all-consuming. And you don't have to compare my story to yours, because everybody's story feels all-consuming for them, right? And it might look like there's no hope. And it might look like you just have to settle for what's being offered to you, which in my case was a horrific road to continue digging my life into rock bottom and probably end up dead in 6 months. You don't have to follow that path of self-destruction. And it sounds so intense saying self-destruction, but it is. If you're settling for anything less than the life deep down you're meant for, it is self-destruction. So tap into that knowing that we all have and really find that more. I'll say to you the same words that were said to me. This is not who you're meant to be. If you're settling, you are meant for so much more. And you may not know how to do it, but you don't have to know how to do it. I didn't know how to do it when I ran out of that room, but you can get the help, you can get the resources, and create something so incredible, far beyond your wildest dreams. So that's my passion. It just really pains my heart to see people settling. And I'm on a mission to make sure that women, especially moms, because I wrote my book for moms, they're my people. You have got to live life. It is not selfish. It is the most selfless thing you could ever do, because me living my, deciding I'm not going to settle, I'm going to go for my best life, has impacted thousands around the world since that moment in my corporate career and now in business.
I love
really
that.
amazing story, Maxine.
Thank
And
you, Maxine.
yes,
that really
thank
gives
you.
me goosebumps. Yeah, that's wow. I love because I always think people may look at you and say, oh, wow, she's so amazing. And you are amazing. But I love that there's always something behind the person, isn't it? This story, this experience that almost fuels you or could destroy you. So I'm always interested to see people, like, obviously kind of take that path off. Like, it's the greatest resistance, but it's worth it, right?
It's so
yeah, I'm interested to know, though, at what point did you decide to write a book, in terms of, did you feel like that was the next progression, or what really fueled you to do that and take that journey?
Oh, yeah, so I didn't want to write a book.
Oh.
And I talk about this in the book as well, actually. I fought this idea. So I already, so I've been in business for a while. I worked in corporate career for like 15, 17 years, went into business, and I already had an Amazon best-selling book with some of the people I was in, business with. And I had no plans. I thought, oh, great, I'm done. And this second book now that I wrote on my own, because that was an anthology, I contributed 1 chapter to, and it was great. This second book, I had no intentions. I never knew I'd write. And this actually got birthed out of another kind of destiny altering moment. And trigger warning for anybody who gets the book. It literally starts off in a near-death experience where I am literally bleeding to death on my bed. And I basically had a horrible mistake, very, very long story. Again, go read it. But I faced death, twice in the face due to complications giving birth to my son. And I remember just being so confused, just feeling so lost, and just feeling like, oh my goodness. And then when you come out of a situation like that, you really value life more. And I've heard you all kind of touch on themes like that, because you both had extreme challenges as well. There's something about you realize the importance of life when you face death in the face, or you face these all-consuming challenges. You want to make every moment count. So the book began as in, okay, you're going to live by purpose now. You don't know why you've been given another chance. You've got to live full out. So as I started living full out, I got a sense of like, okay, I need to write a book. I'm like, I don't want to write a book right now, because I'm still navigating health challenges. My son got born with all these health complications. Like, life is full on. We had a pandemic at the time as well. I'm like, I don't want to write a book. But it was just this calling that wouldn't quit. And I kept on getting the sense of like, okay, maybe this is why I survived, because there's so many things I know, there's so many things I take for granted that help people. I see it helping people in my practice, but it needs to reach a wider audience. Like the systems, the structures I set up couldn't reach the amount of people I know in my heart I wanted to reach. So the book I felt was like a call that just wouldn't quit. And yeah, I feel like it's a divine assignment. I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God. And I feel like God was like, Maxine, I need you to write this book. So it was literally a God, like he might as well have sent Angel Gabriel, for those who are familiar with that, down to come and write this book, because I didn't want to do it. And I basically said as well, because the first book that we had a bestseller with, we self-published that. This book, I actually did traditional publishing, which is normally very difficult, especially for women of color, to get a publishing deal. I remember saying to God, like, I hate you right now. Sorry. I'm getting died twice, like my whole world's falling apart. If you want me to write this book, get me a book deal, knowing full well. No clue. I had no idea anyone in the publishing industry. I had no idea how to get a book deal. I thought, well, if you want a book, get me a book deal. I tell you no lie, ladies. I think within 3 days of me having this tongue-in-cheek prayer, HarperCollins, which is the #2 biggest publisher in the world, announced that they are having this new thing, academy that they're doing for underrepresented writers to help us learn how to write a book and pitch and get a publishing deal. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, I think I have to write a book.
This is the sign.
Now.
No, very long story short, I applied for this. It's
Wow.
hugely competitive, like over 800 people competing for like 15 spaces. And I'm like, well, it's going to take a miracle, because I don't think I was that good in my application, because my head was just in a bad place. It'll take a miracle to get a place. Of course I got a place. I'm the first person to get a book deal from this thing. And then I meet the founder of the academy, an amazing lady by the name of Rose Sandy. She then tells me, like, oh, this whole academy thing of teaching underrepresented writers how to publish books, it had been her retirement plan. She's not that old. So this was going to be happening maybe 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, when I said to God, get me a book deal, at the same time, she felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't leave this for retirement. Maybe I need to do this now. So I was like, oh, my goodness. So I think, I say all of that to say, not that I'm special. I really do believe that when we are aligned to our purpose, coming back to listeners, we see all of these things that cannot be moved. You don't know anybody that does what you want to do, or you don't know anybody in the industry you want to break into. When you say, I'm going to live out my purpose, I am going to go for my best life, literally, if heaven and earth needs to be moved to bring that to pass, it happens.
I think that's really interesting about purpose. And I love the way you talk about that in the book. I think, that kind of, even if you haven't been through that really dramatic near-death experience, I think even the kind of move to motherhood is really life-changing. And I think refinding yourself and finding your purpose is something that for our listeners is really kind of crucial. And I think hearing from you about how women can go about finding their purpose, I mean, obviously it's a big process, but I think giving them some tips here and a bit of advice from you on how they can go about doing that would be fabulous.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think this whole purpose thing has people stuck, and you think, well, I don't know my purpose or whatever. I think it's a journey of self-discovery that will probably continue till we all take our last breath. So probably the easiest thing or the biggest tip I could give the listeners is this: like, what's my purpose in the moment? So I tell you about the near-death experience that the book starts with. I wasn't necessarily thinking about this grand purpose of life that I'm like, now I'm going after full time. What actually saved my life that day? And you'll know, Alex, because you've read the book. I am literally, in the book, I see my life flashing before my eyes, as in like scenes from Nigeria when I was growing up and scenes from Cambridge when I lived there. And, it's like a movie. I didn't know that really happened. It did for me. And I see a light appear in a distance. I'm now heading to that light, knowing in my heart that, oh my gosh, once I get there, everything's going to be fine. And I sense within me like this urge, like, oh, no, don't go to the light. Just look up to the left, look up to the left. And I'm like, and I fought this thing. I don't know how long it was, because you can't keep track of time in these moments. But I finally think, okay, well, if I'm dying, I might as well look up to the left and then go to the light. And I remember looking up to the left and feeling like a lightning bolt go through me, because up to the left is my son. He's asleep in his cot. He's 11 days old. I suddenly think, oh my gosh, I am the food source, because I chose to like, there literally is not even a bottle in this house. Like, if I die, my mom brain's going, if I die, by the time my husband gets over the shock that his wife is dead and remembers that the boy can't eat and runs out to get a bottle and get the formula, oh my gosh, he could die. So my purpose in that moment was to be a food source. So I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. That purpose of, I need to be a food source for this child. My daughter was also lying on our bed, because when she came down to like there, I was like, wow, like if I die, what happens to them? And that purpose was enough to give me whatever I needed to start fighting, because the ambulance crew were there. They were trying to ask me questions and I couldn't even make sense of what they were saying. But the minute I connected to that purpose of I need to be food right now, I could hear them. I could answer the questions and they could rush me to hospital. So purpose, I would say, is don't overcomplicate it. What is it that gives you a lightning bolt? You're like, you know what? This cannot be. Start there. And the more you focus on, you know, that thing that grows. I don't know if it was before we started recording or not, what you focus on expands. And that is just the principle. So if you focus on all the problems and why you can't do it, that expands. But if you focus on, oh my gosh, I need to fix this problem right now that gave me the lightning bolt of purpose, then purpose expands in your life.
That's really great. Thank you, Maxine, because I think what you've done there is you've simplified it, because I think so many people are under this pressure of, I don't have purpose, I don't have passion, where do I start? And it's almost as if you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, start somewhere small, like find the next thing, even if it's purpose for the next 2 or 3 days. And then
everything starts like that. If you think about life, seed, food, tiny, and then it grows, right? So that purpose, just to show you how that's expanded, as you beautifully summarized it, Tiffany, that was there. It started small, and I didn't really know that I was going to be doing all of this that we're doing now. But now, if I had to summarize my purpose to anybody, this big purpose that people tend to be stumped by, my purpose is to resurrect, to give life. So I was giving life then to my son, my child, my daughter, and now I give life to people's dreams that died. I give life, whether I'm on the stage speaking, whether I'm coaching a client in Singapore, Japan, wherever they may be, I'm giving life to that thing they thought had died. But I never would have said, if you'd asked me, oh, what's your purpose? There's no way I could have connected giving life. In that moment of starting small with what's right in front of me, then it opened up this whole world that I can now walk in and just feel so alive, whether that's in work with my family or wherever. I give life to things. That's who I am.
That's beautiful. That's really amazing. And I think, you know, amazing to have used that experience. And I love the idea of the kind of starting small. And I think, you know, you talk about like helping women to navigate motherhood in a more empowered way. And I really love that. And I think your take on having it all really interested me, because Tiffany and I have done an episode about can you have it all? And I think, you know, it's such a overused phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
But I love your take on it. Would you be able to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So I think I wrote in the book as well that I used to hate that phrase, having it all, because kind of being in the corporate world, to me, having it all was like this, oh, you've got to have the job and you've got to have this and you've got to have all of these things and you've got to be doing it all so well and, you know, wear your high heels and a lipstick. And I just remember thinking, like, how can anybody have it all? Like, literally, you just can't. And I used to hate the phrase for that. However, the way I define it now and the way I write about it in the book to try and lead people down the path to is, what is all in the first place? You know, if you get clear on what all is, you can have it at every season in your life. Because people also have this kind of watered down version of you can have it all, but not at the same time. Again, I don't really like that, because there's this feeling of like, oh, you've got to kind of lack something. Yes, there's different seasons of your life. You're going to be different. You're going to be focused on different things, but what is all that would satisfy your soul right now? So for me, in my business, you know, I speak, I write, I do different things. The all that I wanted as, you know, a 30-year-old coming out of Cambridge, that would mortify me right now as this person with, you know, 2 children, one of them who has additional needs right now. So getting clear on what is all for me in this season. And once you're clear on that, and it doesn't have to be perfect, start small, start with what's in front of you, you'll find that if you focus on that, all of these other things that perhaps what society tells us all should look like, they're not that attractive when you're clear on what all really means to you. So I say that's the first piece, people getting clear on what does all mean to me right now. So when I woke up, you know, from when I woke up the nightmare of like delivering, nearly dying, giving birth, now having all these health challenges with me, my child, like all to me right now in that moment was, okay, survive, learn what this diagnosis means. Like once you kind of fill your head, fill your days with what makes sense for you, there's very little room to kind of worry about, especially you don't compare what anybody else is doing. There's very little need to kind of worry about the other parts of the all. And then once you're through those initial challenges or you're dealing with crisis, you get through that, then there's room for your all to grow. So I say just being really very deliberate about what is all to me right now. And that can be a daily thing, even for moms. Like what is all, what's the all I need right now, you know?
Yeah.
And then just once you're clear on that, just shut out all the rest.
I like the bit about the what is all in the different seasons as well. That really resonates with me. I found that really helpful because I thought actually what you need right now might be different to, you know, what was all for past me and what I might need in the future. You know, my life has changed a lot since having kids. And that really made a lot of sense.
Definitely. And give yourself grace. It can change and it can be different to your friends, your mums, or whatever. We're all different and we all bring our flavor, and that's what makes it beautiful.
Yeah. And I like the fact of the introspective nature of it, because I think we live in a society where it's like, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, you know, what's the neighbor doing and what they've bought. But I love like what you're saying about it being an introspective look inside yourself, what matters to you at this stage, because again, it changes. You know, that you're having it all from 5 years ago, it's different having it all right now. There's a book I read by Oliver Berkman, 4,000 Weeks, and I really love that, because what was interesting about this book, and I think kind of relates to what you're saying, is about, it's not about just being more efficient with our time. That is the secret or the goal. It's about being efficient in a way that matters to us. And once you can do that, that's the key to life. It's not just this, you know, because everyone's on the next, like, oh, what's the, you know, routine, what's the money, you know, how can we get more out of life? It's no, you only have an average of 4,000 weeks, but can you do what matters with that 4,000 weeks to you? And once you can clear all that, then you can put in the productivity tools and everything else.
Yeah, and that's powerful. That's reminding me actually about something I wrote in a book. A lot of moms, people in general, actually, because most of the things I put in from coaching leaders and people from all walks of life. But a lot of people live life in what I call reaction mode. So they're reacting to, oh, this person got a new job, so maybe I should be getting a new job. When actually right now, your all is be a stay-at-home mom, because that's what your heart wants. Also in reaction mode to, oh, you know, the family or society expects me to do this, so I'm going to do that. Or you're in reaction mode to, you know, the kids are screaming right now that they don't want me to go, when actually, you know, full well, actually it's in your calling to be where you need. So in reaction mode to all the things. And what I try and lead people to do is don't beat yourself up about it, because we're all human and it's natural to want to react. However, you've got to be in creation mode. And that kind of links back to what you were talking about in that book. What is trying to be created through you? Because the world we were born into no longer exists. Like I think you both had babies in the pandemic, right? Literally, as you birth new babies, the world was almost being reborn into this thing that's still being reborn. So reacting to something, it's not the best thing. We have got to be the ones that create what we want to live in, whether that's in our homes, in our work, and in the world at large. To do that, you cannot be in reaction mode. You've got to see what is coming forth through me. We are our own genius if we take the time to actually look at what's the genius in you that's trying to come forth. And as moms, we are geniuses more than we give ourselves credit for. So what is that thing within you? Don't just react. What needs to be created through you? Because a lot of clients say, oh, you helped me create the impossible, because they took a moment to stop reacting and say, what is trying to come forth through me to impact my family, my work, the world, all of things.
I guess it's about stepping off the almost like the hamster wheel, isn't it? Of just keeping on with everything that's thrown at you, and actually taking that step off to think about what your ideal life looks like. What are the important things to you? How can you move towards those? I think, that sounds like an amazing plan. And it's, but I think sometimes it's easier said than done, isn't it? And I think people sometimes need that kind of coaching to allow them the space to do that.
Definitely. Definitely.
And you talk a lot about the different blockers that people kind of experience, particularly women, and about, creating a true partnership with your husband, which I think is super important. And one of my, I've talked about it a few times on the podcast, how important I think that is, of making sure that you don't just take on society's expectations for women, and that you do create that partnership. But yeah, if you could talk a little bit about some of those blockers, and from your experience of coaching women, what the kind of most common blockers you think are for people achieving what they want to in their lives.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I finally agreed to write this book, I thought I was going to write about, moms don't have time, which we don't have time, right? And as I was kind of thinking about, okay, how do we, do this? Like, how do I help them be more efficient? I'm like, well, I don't even have time. Like, how am I going to tell them how to? So it got to the point where the book wasn't coming forth. And just like, I was talking about reacting versus creating, I had to take a moment and pause about, okay, what needs to be created here? And what came to me was, you call them blockers. I call them like dream killers in the book. I started thinking about, okay, my own life, like all the women I've coached like around the world, literally 6 continents now, what are the common themes that I see stop them? Is it always time? Sometimes it's lack of time, but what are the other things? And that's what I came up with, the 8 dream killers. So the book's kind of structured in the 8 things I see holding women back. And some of them include, you actually don't have enough time. That's one. But some other major things would be around the curse of comparison and people pleasing. So many of us want to just be people pleasing, but actually that impacts us big time. Around confidence, like not feeling that we're good enough. So we feel like we're failing at home, we're failing at work, we're failing with our kids. Not feeling good enough is one. Another one of this I call the I'll do it when mindset. So especially when it comes to us, typically the things that we want to do for ourselves, that kind of goes lower and lower and lower down the list. And we'll do it when we have more time, or we'll do it when we finish the project at work, or we'll do it when our kids, got out of nursery into secondary school. There's always something to do before we can do the thing for us. Or
when the stars align.
The stars align, and we're still waiting like on our retirement bed, right? So basically, so there's like 8. So those are some of them. How many have you said so far? There's crisis. Actually, when life really, when we met before, I said when life is life in, everybody has crisis that you just did not come in. It's like, oh my goodness, I had a plan. I wish life would just let me work my plan. That almost never happens. How do you handle that? And then the other one, when it's not fair, basically sometimes life just is not fair. As a woman, we have like all kinds of gender inequality. We have all kinds of, as a Black woman, I've experienced racism, all kinds of things where not fair. Do you end up being a victim and have your plans derailed? No, there's things that you can do. So I basically chunk up the book into 8 of the main things. It's not going to solve every single thing, but I think if people tackle the 1 or 2 that are most relevant to them, it can make a significant difference. So I can jump into any of those, like we talked about, and share more if it's helpful.
Yeah, I really like that. I don't have enough time. And for me, what I mentioned actually in the first episode was how you wrote the book in little 15-minute chunks, which I think people think, well, what can I do in 15 minutes?
Yeah,
but actually, if you can write a book in those 15-minute chunks, I think that's just incredible. And I think people really underestimate what you can do with those little windows of time.
Exactly. And that's kind of going back to what Tiffany was summarizing before. When things start off small, because I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I've got to write this book, because I can't even remember when I finally got it. Like this bolt of purpose went through me, like it did again, like with my son saving my life basically through that near-death experience. I felt that purpose again, but I'm like, I'm waking up in the morning, between work and appointments and hospital. It's not, all I have is probably like 10 minutes. And I remember just really stressing about that. And I thought, well, it's 10 minutes. Like, what can I do in 10 minutes? And in the book, I talk about, and this is the I'll do it when mindset. I'll do it when I have time, but I didn't have time for like many weeks. And I kept on sensing urgency with this purpose. So what I say in the book, the best way to deal with like situations where you just can't find the time, or, it's tiny, instead of looking at, what you don't have, because if I needed to write an 80,000 word book, like that would take, I don't know how long it takes. But instead of looking at all the time you don't have, what time do you have, and begin to use that with intention. So when I found my 10 minutes, I was like, okay, well, I'll sit down and use that time as intentionally as I can. As I began to do that every day, I'd literally set myself an appointment. It had to be before everybody woke up. And literally my 10 minutes, do it. And as the book began to form and ideas began to flow and stories and these principles, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got more and more excited. And that then gave me, it was a catalyst to then freeing up more time. But you've got to work well with the small, because there's a saying I love in the Bible that says, if you're faithful with a little, you'll be made ruler over much. And that's the principle I use with everything. So I'm faithful with my 10 minutes. And then that 10 minutes became 15, then it became 30. Then it became like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get up in the morning, and I'm going to set my hour for an hour, my alarm for an hour earlier. I think a lot of people make the mistake of I'm going to wake up an hour earlier when they haven't been faithful with the little. But because I'm so excited at how I'd use my 10 minutes, waking up in the morning was a no-brainer. I had this, I'm not a morning person, but now from writing the book, I am a morning person. But that was a result of really being, faithful with the little 10 minutes I had. And then I'm like, loving waking up in the mornings, like there's peace on earth, the house is quiet, nobody wants anything. And it's my time where I have literally my classical music on in the background. I can think, I can hear, I can come up with these concepts. I believe they're divinely inspired concepts that are thankfully changing lives. I cry every time I get somebody email me like, oh, this works. I'm like, oh, it was worth it. You were worth me pushing through with my 10 minutes. So again, this is not about me. I'm hoping people can see themselves in what I'm saying. Maybe in your case, it's 2 minutes. begin to use those 2 minutes intentionally, and as you're faithful with that 2 minutes, this is a principle that will work for you whether or not you go to church. If you're faithful with the 2 minutes, it will grow into something amazing.
And just sorry,
go Tiffany.
sorry. How old were your children at this time when you were writing the book?
Yeah, so this would have been 2020. I was like, gosh, my son would have been 1 at the time, and then my daughter was 5. She would have been 5. Yeah, 5.
Yeah. So how did you deal with that morning? I mean, just like thinking about, maybe there's a mother on this listening and thinking, oh yeah, she can talk. Her kids were older, and they now realize, no, actually 1 and 5 were like, what were the practical things you had to do to make that happen, like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, no, it wasn't easy because my son did not sleep. My daughter slept through the night at like 6 weeks. I thought that's what children did until my son woke up like almost every 5 minutes. And even at that stage, he was still waking up a lot. So I think, to be honest, again, it's a case of like, I'm not going to react. If the child wakes up and needs love, the child wakes up and needs love. And don't feel like you are at the mercy of what's happening to you. There's things that you're going to have a plan and it's not going to work out perfectly every day. But for the days that it does, give it your all. The days that it does not work, oh, well, there's tomorrow. And I think this whole thing of like, it has to be perfect or it's not worth it is a lie that we tell ourselves sometimes. It's never perfect. Like, even the things that look perfect are not perfect.
Yeah.
So I think, just know that life will happen and, you just do the best to the best of your ability. So there was times I'd be writing and I'd wake up, I'd be so happy, I'd have my coffee, I'd have my music and my
baby cries.
walk into the room and I'm like, no!
Oh yeah, I can relate.
I think we both feel that on a very deep level.
Oh, it's so true. But all this you're saying, I mean, it all comes across to me as if you're a very confident person. And I say that with some kind of like, obviously, you have your pillars of what makes you confident. So I'm really interested, where does your confidence come from?
Yeah, so it's changed again. So I've changed so much as an individual, from that crazy person I described in the beginning to somebody who's still growing, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that I found my confidence like probably in different places at every stage of the journey. But I'd say right now, and this is a relatively new thing, I'd say my confidence is from my faith, really, because right now I'm beginning to go. I feel like doors are opening into like places I never thought I would ever get the chance to go to. Like, for example, the most recent one. I've been invited to become an ambassador for this global leaders circle that was launched at the House of Lords. I believe it was a couple of months ago.
Oh,
and
wow.
Speak, you do all of these things. And there's something we talk about imposter syndrome. I think you did a fabulous episode on that. And I'm like, what in the world does anybody in the House of Lords want to hear me? Did they know where I've come from? And that there's all of these voices that tell you like, you don't belong here. However, when I pray, God says, I've opened that door for you. Nobody can close it. You have something worthwhile to say, and I will give you what to say. So there's been instances where like, they're like, oh, get up and say something. I'm like, what do I say? And I'm like, God, you told you give me what to say as I'm walking up to the podium. The trust that comes from that, God's got my back. However, if somebody is not necessarily that way inclined, there are practical tools that you can use to build your confidence. For me, what I just described is the most superior thing. But I talk in the book about my 6C confidence checklist, where the 6 things that I think before I had this kind of God confidence, you could say, that helped me of like, okay, first of all, like the first thing I think was, what thing I'm not feeling confident about? Am I even clear on, what the outcome I'm trying to do? Get clear on what you're trying to do. Because sometimes we get this lack of confidence when we're worried about, how should I be doing this? I'm comparing myself to this person and I can't do it like them. And we're trying to do it like them when we were never created to do it like them. When you get clear on what you're trying to do and how you were created to excel at things, you can match up how you naturally excel with what needs to get done. And there's also something that people forget a lot, which is to actually remember how far you've come. Like, look back on past successes. There were that were, oh my gosh, so terrifying when you try to do them, and actually you did them. And for most ambitious moms who will be listening to this podcast, usually when you achieve something that was monumental, we don't even stop to celebrate. We don't even stop to acknowledge. We just move the goalpost to something else that terrifies us, and literally playing Goliath and not even stopping to say, girl, well done. So there's something to be said for, I literally, and I love that you have that episode where you celebrate, oh my gosh, we got to 10 podcasts. Because that was a Goliath, that was a mountain. thing that you didn't see. And we don't stop to do that enough. And the more we start to see how far we've come, then you get to trust yourself. So you go into a situation where yours is the equivalent of the House of Lords. You walk in, you're like, oh my goodness, I have to speak to these people from all these, what they call them, delegates and contingents from all these nations. But I've done something before that I didn't know how I was going to do. And that gives you a little bit of confidence to keep going.
That is beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. I really love that. I think, I mean, that's something that I think in a previous episode, I've talked about how, like, personally for me, looking at, you know, things you've achieved is really helpful in driving you forward.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Because I think, you know, I've got a bit of an attitude to feel the fear and do it anyway.
And I think you've got to do that because people are waiting for, like, oh, for me not to feel the fear. I've spoken to, I don't know how many tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands of people now online on Twitter. I still feel fear every time I get up because I feel like, oh my gosh, this is something you know, you don't know. But you feel it and you do it anyway. So that is relevant too.
And
I think like that reflection on, you know, those past achievements, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I think you get to the other side of that and you think, God, that was really not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's very rare that you think, well, that was a total disaster. I think, you know, it happened, but
there will be disasters. But again, as long as you're alive, the disaster is an opportunity to learn. That's what.
And actually, interestingly, though, we women can be hard on ourselves because I've had those like, oh my gosh, what a disaster! And then people have come and said, oh,
that's funny.
It's amazing. And you're like, really? And we point all the little things that we think went wrong. When actually, again, because you're focused on that and that expands, when people are focused on the beautiful thing that you gave, right? And we tend to be harder on ourselves than other people are, you know, with things like that.
Yeah.
That's really true. I always think about, you know, when you've prepared loads to go for a job interview or something like that, you've got all your background knowledge, you come out of it and you might think, oh, that went really well at first. And then you start to dwell on, oh, but I didn't say this bit. They can't see the bit you didn't say. They don't know what you had in your mind that you wanted to get out there and you didn't. They're hearing the content that you actually came out of. And I think that's a really, you know, that for me is like a personal example of where you are harder on yourself than the people who are interviewing you, watching you speak, whatever.
Exactly.
But there is evidence that also women are harder on themselves. And even applying for jobs, women tend to want to meet every requirement.
100%, yeah.
You know, so I think myself and Alex discussed this a few weeks back, and we said something like, we said a silly thing about, if you think a man would do that, then you should do it.
Yeah, definitely. And absolutely, I love that. And also, even to get the job, like, not only does it, you know, it continues from there because, like, in the job, because I coach a lot of female leaders. So in the job appraisals or the performance reviews, where they tell them, oh, you've done this, you've done that, you've grown this partnership, and but one thing that you could do is, you know, maybe one little thing, and then they come and fixate on that. And I'm like, but what about this that you doubled and the new partners and the new business? Oh, but I'm like, listen, that's somebody that you hire to take care of that, right? Focus on all of these amazing things, and we can just be so hard on ourselves like that.
I recently applied to this mentorship program where I said, look, it's for mothers returning to work. So I said I'd be happy to mentor someone. And obviously, even for me, at the back of my head, it was part of me that was like, are you sure you can mentor someone? But I was like, no, I've suffered enough. I'd rather maybe guide someone along the journey, or, you know, just helping them to build the confidence, go back to work. And I remember speaking to a lady who started the program and said, you know what, like, thank you so much for applying, because we're just getting so many women come to ask for help as mentees, but not many asking as mentors. And I thought, would this be the case if it was a men's program? All the men would be like, yes, I can coach someone.
Yeah, there'll just be no mentees.
Yeah, so, you know, it's just
so true. Yeah, that's huge. And oh, goodness me, what you're doing here, you'd be an amazing mentor. But there's so many other women that also have the ability to make such a profound difference, and they don't have the confidence. And I look at my husband, like, he's an engineer, like, in the oil and gas industry, like, so detailed, brilliant, you know, did a lot of amazing things. Then he made the switch, I think it was like a year and a half ago, from like the exploration where they go get the oil and gas to now on the other side where they sell it on the market. They look at what the government's doing. And it is like a career switch, because, you know, somebody can study for one thing and study for the other. So he's made this career switch. And I remember looking at him like 2-3 months into this thing, and he was on a meeting, he was like leading, he was talking. I'm like, how is he?
I've seen your CV.
women that, are in the group, maybe, even myself, I'm like, I don't know that I'd have been so like out there contributing and
Wow.
you just knew there's
You'd
something.
still be like, I've got a lot to learn. I've moved over from this side.
He was like adding such value, and I'm like, wow. And I teach this stuff, and I was amazed. So I think that if we can learn a thing or two from them, let's do that. That actually, even if we do have a lot to learn, it doesn't stop us from actually sharing what we do know, which is what I actually love. The premise of this podcast. You were saying, listen, we don't have all the answers. We're kind of learning out loud, or I think that's how you said it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is stuff that you do know that is of value, and actually you can share the relatable continued struggles with the view that we're going to all learn together. So I think this ability that we need to know everything and have solved world peace and be so perfect to add value is nonsense. We've got to stop setting that standard for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And, we really want to kind of build a community where women support women. And I love that that's what you're trying to do as well. And that's what you're doing, because I think when we're talking there about those examples of men having that innate confidence, or I guess, there are all sorts of groups that men can join that help them get a leg up and things like that. I think we need that space for women to be able to do it and to help women find their purpose, find their confidence, and feel like they can go for those opportunities, and help them not sweat the small stuff. Because I think that's one of the big things, like you're saying, they hear that one negative thing and that is the big deal to them. And actually a man might come out of that with a completely different perspective of, listen to how brilliantly I've, that went brilliantly. They think I'm doing a great job, and brush off, like shake off the negative comment and just move on from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. I even see that already, like in my daughter and my son. Like my daughter will dwell on all the things. Whereas my son's like, oh, you kind of correct him on something. He's like, okay, and he moves on. So you already, I don't know where it's if it's in us or like if we learn it. I'm trying deliberately not to teach them like, hey, dwell on this, my daughter, and move on quickly, my son. But you almost see it at that age already, that men just tend to move on a lot quicker. So I think that's something we can look to learn, perhaps.
Yeah. Another topic just to get your take on as well is mom guilt. I mean, what do you think of that, and where do you stand?
Yeah, I mean, we all have it, and we all experience it. I don't think I've met a mom anywhere in the world that hasn't, to some level, experienced this. So it's widespread, and I would say that number one, guilt. I heard this. I was on this other podcast. The lovely lady Zoe. And she was saying, is it really guilt? Guilt is when you've done something wrong, as in guilty verdict, right? So she was basically saying, when you're feeling guilty, think about, have I done something wrong? And if you've done something wrong, make it right? But most of the time that we're feeling guilty, we haven't actually done something wrong. So I thought that was quite a nice distinction that, people make. But then also, I literally have a whole chapter in the book, because that's one thing I can't believe I didn't mention it before. That's like the mama of all the problems, all the blockers. Alex talks about mom guilt. Because typically, especially when you're moms with ambition, like you're going to feel guilty about, I want to do the next thing with work, or I want to start that side hustle, or I want to do this. That is just something that is going to come up. So there's literally something I had to, in my writing, think, how realistically do we deal with this? And there's like a 6-step framework, but I'll give you in the 2 minutes or 10-second bite, is that there's going to be trade-offs. There's going to be times where you will have to do the thing with your children, or there's going to be times where if you are going to fulfill that ambition, you will have to do the thing with the work. And it cannot be done. This decision cannot be done in reaction mode to some guilt that is not even real, because you haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with following your purpose and your passion to do what you're meant to do. I think sometimes we hold on to this guilt because we think what I want to do is for me, it's selfish and it takes away something. However, what I found in my own business, in my own clients, in my own throughout careers, is that usually that thing, that ambition that feels so selfish, is really, it involves so many people outside of you. So for me, overcoming guilt in the way that made sense has helped so many people. As in, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't kind of overcome the guilt of like, I need to take time to write a book and do all these things. So it's a case of making your decision of what trade-off you're going to make in an intentional way. You can't be in reaction mode, because if you react and say, okay, I'm always going to spend time with my kids, you're going to be with the kids. And I guarantee you, if you're meant to be out there fulfilling ambition, you will be resentful. You will feel like, oh my gosh, life has passed me by and you're going to regret somehow. However, if you actually, you know, if you're always at work and you're never ever listening to tune into intuition that will tell you actually no, be at home, you will actually feel like I'm doing something wrong because you know your intuition has told you be at home. So it's intentional about what's the right trade-off to make. So I hope I've explained that in a way that, you know, people can.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, what you're saying there is you making that decision, the one that sits right with you, and then you are moving on from it. You're not dwelling on it. You're making that choice, and then you are not allowing yourself to feel the guilt because you've made a conscious decision that that's what you're going to do.
And the thing is, to be honest, there is no guilt for me now. Like, for example, I used to feel so guilty about, oh my gosh, like I've got to go to work and stuff. But when I started using this intentional decision making, I don't allow myself to feel guilt. I think I write in the book about there's one time where, you know, everything had gone wrong. Like, you know, my child had been sick or whatever. And like, we hadn't slept for like 10 days. And I check in, like, where should I be? Should I go to work to film this big thing? Or do I stay at home? And my intuition was like, you need to go to work because this is important. And I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world do I do? And basically I kept on checking in, what do I do? And, you know, part of the intuition said, okay, call over grandma. You know, I set things up so that actually I knew that my child was well taken care of, and actually probably better taken care of than I would have been because I hadn't slept for 10 days. Yeah. So when I then went to work, I could not be mentally there, because I think that's what holds a lot of mums there. The back, actually, you're in one place, but you're mentally in another place. And meanwhile, the people that you're supposedly competing with for all the opportunities, they're fully there. Mentally in one place. So once I had set things up the best way I knew how, that my child was well, I went to go film this thing, and my mind did not go there about, oh, Maxine, you're being a bad mom. I'm being a brilliant mom. I brought him a well-rested grandmother that's going to look after him and make sure that everything's all right to look after me when I get home. So I could go and literally put on my A game for work. And I think we've got to get to the point where you know that when you're making decisions intentionally, you're not reacting, you are creating the best possible opportunity. When you've done your best to create, which you will not do perfectly, then you've got to know, right, I'm moving there mentally to that place as well.
Yeah, I like that you said that, which you won't do perfectly. You know, we've said time and time again on the podcast that perfection is the enemy of progress, and that it just really stands in the way, and nobody's perfect. No. So you do the best that you can, and you accept that, and you then move on to do what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because what's ruminating on, oh my gosh, I made such a bad decision, ever going to do for you? That's just going to make that get bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know it, you sink into depression, which I have done. It's not fun, right? So you pick yourself up, right? Do the best you can, and know that as a human being, all 8 billion of us, or however many there is, we are all going to make a mistake at some point. You know, forgive yourself and do the best you can.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's a really good way probably to end today.
Yeah, I could talk to you all day, by the way. I love, like, yeah, I think it's just beautiful to kind of see like the what's going on behind the scenes in terms of your thinking and how you've reached that conclusion. This conclusion, I just think, again, a lot of it is coming down to like your experience and this confidence you have in yourself and your purpose. And I really think it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, thank you for putting all that out.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Maxine. I think it would be a great opportunity for you to tell our listeners where to find you. So this is the fabulous Maxine Nwaneri, and I love that your name means the future is greater.
Name literally means the future is greater. So for any Nigerians or people who know Nigerians, my actual first name is not Maxine, it's Nkiruka, which literally means the future is greater. So that is where you can find me, at thefutureisgreater.com. So you can connect with me there. I'd love to, you know, hear your story. If you read the book, let me know. That's how actually Alex and I connected. She read the book, and I'm just so excited to see, you know, women like
I will read it, Maxine. I'm sorry, not yet, but I will read it. I'm looking for an electrical engineer, so you know, I've got this big project that's just taking away my mental like energy. But I will read the book.
And by all means,
I will read it.
Know your story, because I'm also on socials, Maxine Nwaneri. You'll probably put it in the notes.
We'll put it in the notes, yeah.
And I really love to hear your stories, because as we do this, the ripple effect of moms in their ambition, in their purpose, it is literally going to change the world. And I can't wait to hear your story.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll put all of the links into the episode notes. And just to also say that Maxine recorded the audiobook as well, which is, I listened to the audiobook first. So for people who are, you know, short on time or feel like they don't have much time to read, the audiobook's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your support, ladies. And please keep doing what you're doing. It really is amazing.
Thank you.
Maxine.
All right. Thanks, guys. I hope you've really enjoyed the episode.
Thank you, guys.